listening to The Leading Edge with Mindy Audlin and Stacey Collins.
Welcome back. We are talking about structure, simplicity, and growth strategy. How do you grow a mission-centric organization, and how do you do it in a way that doesn't just completely overload your senior team? How do you do it in a way that is simple and scalable? So we've been talking specifically about planning the year, like setting up your calendar. And that's the great thing when you have a system that is duplicatable, you can plan out the year super easy. What are you going to do for the fall and what's going to happen in the summer? So Stacey, talk a little bit about your planning process and how things work at Unity of Houston.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we actually just finished our summer series, and what I love about the summer, as you mentioned, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit casual, easy breezy, because some people are really, especially when they have the opportunity, getting out there and traveling. But other people really, that's the time they actually have some extra time to connect. And so what we tend to do is keep it as easy as possible. This year, we did a Many Paths, One Door series. It was a Sunday series our ministers did. And they created discussion questions from their talks, and we just gave those to the group leaders. And the groups met, either they came to church together, watched the service together, or they watched the service on their own and got together and talked. And so that was a great, just kind of casual summer series. So as Mindy mentioned, this is the time. This is the beginning of the Spirit Group year right now, the fall.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely the best time to do something, to launch a small group program, because as Mindy said, people are coming back from either traveling, the school year, they're getting the kids settled, and they're coming back to church, and whether it's online or in person, that part doesn't matter. They're coming back. And so if you have a series, and we're going to talk about some content later on, but that's really when you want to start your series in the 10 weeks, like you said, and end before Thanksgiving. And then what we tend to do at Unity of Houston, we take a little break after Thanksgiving, and then we get ready for our January launch. And we usually have we have a couple of choices for the hosts that really want us to help them find something to do. And then we give them choices of finding things on their own that they might want to do with their groups. And I love what you said about spring too, because Easter Sunday is like the best energy for getting people to sign up for a group. They're just in there as a celebration. There's possibility in the air, it's just wonderful. And they have time to finish that up before the summer. And so I love that there's little breaks in between each one of these, because it's a break for the host. It's a time to jump in and start a new series. Maybe you're going to be traveling for the month of October, so you sit this series out, but you can always come back in. So it's like a constant invitation to you make it the commitment for that series, but knowing that you can come and go as you need to.
Yeah, so I mean that's the great thing about planning out your year is if you have these seasons and what we recommend is Stacey talked about this 10-week cycle. So for the fall, for winter, for spring, we have this very set structure, and then the holidays can get a little, get a little chill, a little casual. The summertime, get a little chill, a little casual. But the structure is, and I'll just share what we do in the fall because we use that in the winter and the spring as well. But here's what we recommend. We do this in 10-week cycles. So what we typically do is the first week, we bring people in. We actually call it week 0 because week 0 it's a connection event. It's a chance for people to come together and just without any commitment, without any feeling like what did I just sign up for? It's a chance to just kind of come, meet the people, see what it is, see if you want to commit to the series. But there's nothing, it's just a party. Just come check it out. So it's very easy to invite your neighbors, invite your friends. I'm having this thing at my house. Come check it out. If you want to join us for the whole series, great. But if you don't, just come see if it's a good fit for you. So very easy point of entry for our week 0. So in this 10-week cycle, that's how we kick things off. And then we have our series. And like Stacey said, we have an entire episode we're going to dedicate to how do you, what is the content that you put into your small groups? Most people that I talk to in New Thought, when I say small groups, they immediately jump to content. And when we talk about small groups, the content is actually the tiniest piece of it. But we'll have an entire episode dedicated to how do you create content? What are some content ideas for your small groups? But what we do is we divide that content into 6 weeks. So all of our curriculum for small groups runs in a 6-week cycle of, building on a theme. So you could do a book study, you could do all kinds of different things. Then after those 6 weeks, so we're now 7 weeks into our series, we have a week set aside for groups to do something social together. And if you think back on the episode that we did on culture, how we talked about connection being so important, one of the ways we reinforce that connection is with that social event. It's fascinating to me. Sometimes I'll see these groups. We always start with, we have food and hangout time and mingle time. And I'll see groups that are like, oh yeah, we skip that. We just want to get to the content. And I'm like, but the connection is the content. The connection is the content. So we integrate connection in every one of our gatherings, but we also have an entire week where it's like, there's no curriculum here. There's nothing that we need to process together. We're just going to go have some fun in whatever way that group decides to have fun. So that's week 8. And then week 9 is a service project. So we do the group can decide what they want to do for service, and they put those projects into motion. And we'll have, I believe we'll have an episode. This kind of shares some ideas for what other ministries and other groups have done for service projects. It is so inspiring to see how people get out into the community, which was also one of our cultural foundations. And then finally, week 10 is our celebration week. And so what we recommend is week 10, you bring all your group leaders together, all your groups come together, and you celebrate what they've done. You celebrate what they've learned, the ahas, the takeaways. You celebrate, you share pictures from their social events, you share pictures from their service projects, and you show how that ties to your mission. And what I love about these events, they're done so that you can invite anyone to attend. And at the end of that celebration, you can promote your next small group launch. So you're constantly, with everything you conclude, you have the next step. Here is if you want a piece of this, if you want to participate in this, here is the next step. And you are constantly letting people know specifically what you're guiding them into next. So so Stacey, do you want to talk about that cycle for you and kind of how you roll it out in terms of the content and the connection, or any insights you've seen about how that structure works?
Yeah, and it's been so interesting over the past year with the groups meeting online. Sometimes those social events, they can't have them in person, but it's funny, the groups still love to come together and have that time to, just like you said, just meet and just be silly. We've had everything from, costume parties online, game nights, you name it, tea parties, whatever they want to do. So that's a really, I know what you mean. It could be tempting for people to say, oh, is that really important because we've met and talked about this content all along? But there's something special that happens when people are just free to just kind of, and a little bit of unstructuredness after some of the structure, right?
Yeah.
And I love what you said about the service projects, because that's another thing I think we can fall into as a spiritual community. There are so many good causes out there. There are so many. And what do we officially support and tied to and do this? Because, what's the limitation there? But what happens in the spirit groups is almost 9 times out of 10, somebody in the spirit group is already involved in volunteering for an organization, or they have something that's really on their heart because maybe their mother stays at this particular nursing home that could need some support, or whatever it is. And the things that come out of these spirit groups for service projects, the leadership could have never even dreamed up these individual and how to do that. But here they are just popping up and being taken care of by the group. And it's just absolutely beautiful.
I love that you mentioned the online versions of this, because I did see a lot of ministries when COVID rolled around, they're like, oh, we can't do it now. We can't do connection events. We can't do service projects because of COVID, because COVID. And what I'm here to tell you is that's a limiting thought. That is a limiting thought, because just like you're sharing, for those who said, okay, it's going to be different, we're not going to all go bowling together. We're not going to all stick our hands in the nacho plate together like we used to. But
Right.
what can we do? I love a costume party online. I have seen movie watch parties online, pizza parties online, dinner parties online. Everybody make dinner. We're going to eat at 6. Everybody turn your Zoom cameras on, and we're going to have happy hour, or we're going to do, what I have seen people get creative. And because connection doesn't require the locality. Like
Right.
connection is bigger than locality. And if you can foster the flame of, I know it's different, but what can you do? What can you do? What that does is it empowers your leaders to think more creatively, to not be so shut down as soon as we hit an obstacle. But okay, what can you do now? And I saw some incredibly inspiring service projects that came up during COVID, where some churches were like, I don't know, we can't go out and do the food bank anymore. We can't go out and serve the homeless. But what can you do? And I love that you shared some of the things that your community has done. And I saw people who, one church had a small group that decided they were going to be technology angels for people in the congregation who didn't know how to watch the services on Zoom. And someone will show up at their house and say, let me set up your computer. Let me show you how. And, I've seen people that did letter writing campaigns to emergency personnel, to military families, to all kinds of different things that people found ways to, knitting clubs, like let's get together and knit together and send it off to so and so. People got creative, and that's what I love about the human spirit is when things get tough, we can keep rising, keep rising, keep rising. And I definitely saw that in this past year. So that is the structure. And when you repeat that structure and people get a feel of, okay, there's a cycle here. And that cycle has a beginning and an end. So I'm not committing for the rest of my life. I'm committing for, 10 weeks. And I even tell people, because I have people go, 10 weeks, I can't commit to something for 10 weeks. I actually kind of wiggle in and say, it's kind of a 6-week commitment, because the first one, you're not really having to commit.
Right.
And there's 6 weeks of content. So it's a 6-week commitment. And then we have fun together and we serve together, So if you have people that are afraid of commitment, I've had churches say, oh, we can't do small groups because it's hard enough just getting them here on Sunday. I am telling you, if you create an opportunity for people to connect and to grow, people who say they didn't have time, what they didn't have time for is something that didn't have a return for them. The return on being part of a small group is so high. The spiritual return on being able to connect with people at this level is so high that you get very busy people who will make time for this, even when you thought it's really hard to get them to do anything. It's just putting the right thing in front of them. Have you found that? What have you found in terms of people getting engaged because of their small group participation?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we touched on this in one of the previous episodes, but there's something about when you meet with your small group versus if you skip out on service or whatever, somebody's going to notice you're missing. Actually, everyone's going to notice you're missing. Right. And so there is this, and then you get this because you're checking in with each other, and the longer the groups meet and they get into the series, you really become invested in each other's lives. And it happens so quickly. That's the part I never fail to be amazed at, is how quickly you can take 6, 8 people who didn't know each other before. Maybe a couple of them did. And then by week 3, they're sharing such vulnerable experiences with one another. But that creates this container that people do want to keep coming back for more, and they want to be there for each other. And so we have seen, especially since the pandemic, actually, I think people are really needing the connection and really wanting to be there for others, that we've had really great attendance in the groups. Now, of course, there will be people that, they get in, they're like, wait a minute, I said I'd do what? For how many weeks? Right. But that's okay. You may see them again a year from now, and they're completely, your most committed member. That's okay.
Right. Well, and one of the things that is popping up for me that in terms of the structure, and here's how the year works, and here's how the program works. We have basically, when you have someone that is hosting a group for the first time, we call them hosts. When we recruit hosts. And what it means when we call someone a host is it is it's your first time to check it out, to see how it goes. And we have a training for them. We have them come together from 90 minutes, 2 hours, and say, here's here's how things work, here's what to expect, here's when the series begins, here's when it ends, here's what's expected of you. So we train those new hosts, and then every week we are huddling up with those first-time hosts to make sure that they are supported, to make sure they have connections with each other, to make sure they have a forum for saying, hey, this happened, I didn't know what to do. So there's a lot of support that first week out. And then once they come back, then we graduate them into becoming a small group leader. So our small group leaders are ones who have been through that pilot program. They've been through their initial small group, and now they're continuing. And we have continual support and training for them as well. It's not as frequent, but once a month we get our experienced hosts together and we provide next level advanced leadership training. We create that culture. And that is why, without this structure, without this infrastructure, what I've seen in other churches and what people are like, oh, I can't let them create those tight connections because then they'll just fade off and do their own thing. But that doesn't happen with this structure because the leader is anchored to the program leader, and the leader is anchored to the mission, and the leader is anchored to other leaders, and they feel the truth that they are part of a team that is bringing the mission to life. It's not some spin out. It is part of the bones of the ministry, and they know that going in, and it's reinforced throughout. It's not a training they get once and then, hey, good luck with that. It is a leadership development program for your group leaders, and through their leadership development that they are developing the leadership of your congregation. So anything you want to add to that, Stacey, just in terms of the role of the program leader as a trainer of leadership development for your group leaders?
Yes, and I love that you talked about the relationship too, because that's key with the spirit group hosts or small group hosts, is that they feel not only supported, but that they feel that, like you said, this isn't a spin-off movement. They are a vital part of the community. And in fact, you could not do this without them, but because they are willing. And so what I've witnessed a lot is our small group hosts are pretty proud of their small groups. They love to tell the ministers and check in with the ministers and tell them about how their group's doing, what they did for their service project and how it's going, because they do feel that it's connecting them in a deeper way to the community. So yes, it's definitely so engaging.
I've even seen spirit group leaders, we're spiritual, but we have some competitive people. I mean, come on. I've seen people like, we have the best spirit group. We have the best small group. And there's a little bit of healthy competition, I think, in terms of having that accountability party, that celebration at the end where, like, what did you do? What, how much fun did you have? And what did you do for your service project? I think there's a little bit of a, sort of a healthy competition in terms of who can do the most good. How can we, what were the ahas and the insights that we had individually, but, what did we do together to enrich our community? So that's an overview of, here's how we approach the year. Here's how we approach the series in our 10-week cycles. For the holidays, I always say, what I love to do is take the momentum from the fall and just say, hey, if you want to get together, I encourage you to do service projects. We encourage you to get together socially to whatever degree your people are available. But it's great to have a holiday party. It's great to go caroling together. It's great to, whatever you can do based on, the CDC's recommendations. But there are things that you can do in the holidays, because for the holidays can be a very lonely time for people. So it is nice to have opportunities for people to connect. Summer, same way, a lot of flexibility. We have some people that are like, if you can't be if you have to miss a meeting, it's like, oh, you got to Zoom in, or you got to, but in the summertime, it's a little more lax. It's, come when you can. If you got a vacation, go on vacation. Just come when you can. More social events, more service projects, things like that to make the summer series a little bit special. So that's the overview of how a series works. And so the final piece I want to share as we talk about scalability and growth, this isn't really an overview that we're going to go into much more detail as we go through this series. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button, because you don't want to miss any of these. These are all really, really important steps. This is a process, it's called engagement strategy. And the question is, how do you engage people in your mission? How do you engage your congregation so that it's not just the minister trying to accomplish something, but it's the entire community trying to accomplish something for the world together, trying to make a difference, transform lives together? So how do you do that? Well, there are 5 steps. And this is a model that that I created for Spirit Groups. But after it was created, and I actually had taught it a few times, I found a document from Charles Fillmore, co-founder of the Unity movement, from back in 1929. And what had happened in the early days of New Thought was, we had this idea, this teaching, and everybody was excited about it and everybody wanted to teach it. And so, boom, let's have churches, let's have these spiritual centers. Spiritual centers was the word. And people started going out and doing these Unity spiritual centers. But word started getting back to Charles Fillmore saying, people are doing some crazy stuff and calling it Unity. I mean, I can't imagine that would happen. But that was happening back in the 1920s, and it was flourishing. But people would go to a Unity community, and they'd be doing things that maybe weren't necessarily in alignment with Charles Fillmore's teachings or Myrtle Fillmore's teachings. So Charles Fillmore put together a document in 1929 that was his vision for what a Unity Center would be and how it would operate. And in the midst of it, one of the things I love about it, and I've said it before and I'll probably say it again, is the idea that the job of the spiritual director, the spiritual leader, is to cultivate coworkers. Our job is not to be, at the pinnacle of the hierarchy, but our job is to create others, because he said when other people get these insights, they're naturally going to want to be teachers and healers just like you. And so that's what we're here to do, is to create this movement of coworkers here to bring these teachings to the masses. He also said that he said we've got to be purpose driven. I mean, so that was foundational. We have to start with purpose. And then he said it's also important to realize that people go through phases of spiritual development and spiritual growth. And he laid out those 5 stages. And I tell you, it's as if he was the voice in my head, because the model that I've been teaching lined up exactly with what he was saying. So I'm going to share with you what that model is, and know that in the next 6 weeks, in the next 6 episodes, we're going to be going into more detail on each one of these. So like I said, follow, subscribe, and like. But here's what Charles said, and I absolutely agree. First and foremost, when you want to bring your mission to life, you want to look for who are the people that would be a good fit for this. And we would like to say, oh, it's for everybody in the world, but no, it's not. It's really for people who are looking for spiritual community. If you had someone who is like, I don't like spiritual community, you probably don't want to go out of your way to try to recruit them. So we want to look for people who are, I call them the explorers. They're exploring different spiritual possibilities, and maybe your community is one of them. So how do you find those explorers? That's what we're going to talk about next week. Once they come in the door, now we want to engage them. We want them to come in the door and then keep coming back. We don't want them to come in the front door and leave through the back door. We never see them again. So then how do we engage them? So we'll do an entire episode on engagement strategies. How do you keep them coming back? Small groups being a huge piece of it. Then once they're coming back, once they're in a small group, once they're coming regularly, how do you expand their knowledge of the teachings? Not just jumping into, hey, be a board member. Like, let me learn what these teachings are first. Let me see, like, what is the most important thing that you teach? What are the foundations, the foundational principle that every member of your community should know? The next piece, the next step is, now that I'm familiar with the teachings, am I using the teachings? Am I expressing them? So the 4th step is to express what you're learning, to put it into motion, so that I'm not just talking about service, I'm being of service. I'm not just talking about financial abundance, I'm acting philanthropically, I'm tithing, or I'm contributing. So how do you move people into that level of consciousness where they are not just aware of your teachings, but they're actually living them and congruent with them? And then that leads us into the 5th step, which is a leadership consciousness of, I call it the encourager. It is someone who's been through the process, been through that evolution of the soul, evolution in terms of participating in your mission and your ministry, and excited about encouraging others to follow in their footsteps. And once you can move people through that entire cycle, that is what we call scalability. That is where now it's not just the minister, it's not just your program leader, it's not just a select group of people that's there knowing, how things work. It is, everybody is on a path to that. Everyone's on a path to leadership. So my challenge for you as we move into the week is to really take a look at, what can you simplify? what do you need to start doing to simplify things? What do you need to stop doing because it's not great use of your time? And what are the things that no matter what happens, you got to keep doing that thing? What's the most important thing to your ministry? Stacey, anything you want to add about what should be top of mind at this point in your program?
Yes, you know what? It's actually the perfect time to be looking for those hosts, looking for those explorers too, as you mentioned, and starting them on their exploration. Looking for those people that you know that would just have a love for people and a love for the teachings and messages in the spiritual community, and would just really enjoy helping people connect. So that's what I would be doing right now. And then once you have that, then the rest will fall into place. But that's the key.
I love it. And if you'd like to put this into application, I would also challenge you to write out your calendar, pull out the calendar, map out when does my fall series start? When does my winter series, my spring series, put it on the calendar, plan for your year. And that's a great thing to get going. And then choose, what do you want to do this fall? What's your series going to be about? Pick a topic and get those leaders ready to be trained. So now's the time to be thinking about, what do I need to teach my group leaders? What would that orientation look like so that you're prepared when they come? So thanks for being part of our leading edge conversation. Thank you, Stacey, for sharing your experience. Next week, we talk about the explorers. How do you reach them? Who are they? And how do you invite them to come see you? So we'll see you here next time. Thanks for joining us on The Leading Edge.